All right. So, one thing I just want to see if anyone is brave enough to share what they're working on. No? All right. So, I'm thinking that means that you're still working on things. Is that true? Anyone?
Yes, that's true, Miss Mill.
Thank you, Tommy. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to show you some more information about working with paper. So maybe it will inspire you. And I'm going to show you a paper artist whose work is kind of amazing. And then some more examples. And you'll be set with all the tools you might need to create something. So this is part 2 of what we already saw from this guy.
Culture is called scoring. I don't mean scoring points. Scoring in art means to scratch. So I'm going to use a stylus. This is a double-ended stylus. It has 2 different points on it. And it's just a pointy tool that actually will allow me to scratch into the surface of the paper. I'm actually going to make an indentation into the paper. So scoring is actually a great way to create a little bit of 3 dimension in a flat piece of paper. And this is actually really good for organic shapes like leaves and wings and things like that. So the idea with scoring, though, is that you end up bending the paper. People get confused with folding. You can use scoring to fold, but this is actually really nice to just draw a line. So I'm going to use this pointed tool. You probably won't be able to see the indentation that I actually draw down the center of this, but I'm pressing really hard. I'm making an indentation into the paper. And then what I'm going to do is actually press on either side of that indentation, that line. Just do it real easily at first. So what's going to happen is that paper is going to start to bend right where you weakened it with that score mark. And then just after a little while, really starts to bend. And you can see that it's actually kind of curved. It's not a fold because all folds are straight. But that gives me now a 3-dimensional form. So it's still pretty flat, but it has that nice 3-dimensional form. I can do multiple score marks on one piece of paper and get sort of a ruffled or ridged effect. I'm going to show you that with a circle. So I'm going to actually use my compass to draw a circle. I'm going to try to put this in the center because I do need a whole circle. And again, I'm going to mark this center. And then I'm going to make sure that I'm not going to go off my paper. I'm going to go ahead and draw my circle. So I just use the pencil for the outside. And then I'm going to use my compass. Then I'm going to use my compass and my stylus now. I'm going to go in here and actually draw a circle with my stylus. And then I'm going to come up here. And so I'm basically making concentric circles using my stylus. And then I'm going to cut this out. Now when I do this, after I cut it out, this is actually a modified cone. So I want to cut a slit into it. If I try to pop up the score marks, it won't work because the paper kind of has to move. It has to go somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and do that in here. I'm going to cut a slit to the center. Okay, I'm just going to show you with this first score mark. That basically I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to kind of bend it and kind of walk around. So my thumbs are on either side of that score mark. And that paper will start to pop up or curve right on that indentation that I made. And I go really easily at first because I don't want to actually fold my paper. So just pressing lightly, it'll actually start to bend on that score mark. And then to really make it pronounced, I'll go ahead and pull it flip it over, you can really see how it has created this different cone. So here's a slightly bigger circle that I did earlier, where I did both of the ridges, and I just bent them in different directions. And I haven't even glued them yet, but it's staying in this form, so I can put a little bit of glue on there. And then that's the way to do some curved lines with my score marks. The final scoring, I'm actually going to do a long, skinny prism. And so I'm going to actually use a ruler and my stylus and a piece of paper that's a lot wider than I really need. And I could measure this out, but I'm just going to eyeball it. So I'm going to use my stylus. I'm going to score. Basically, we're going to be the corners of my prism. So this would be really hard to actually just fold without scoring it first. So scoring actually can help me get some really nice folds, and the paper will fold exactly where I want it to. Okay, and then I have to do a fourth one, okay, because I need to have a tab. So I'm actually going to have like 4.5 sides, and that last half side I can cut here in a minute. So what I'm going to do is actually use my ruler to help me fold. So I have my finger kind of underneath the edge of that paper. I'm just going to ease it up. And my paper actually folds right on that score mark. The ruler doesn't have to be right on the score mark. It just has to be close to it. And so I'm going to do that each time. And do that 4 different times on each of my corners. And then what I can do is really crease it. This is where if I want to use my spatula or my bone folder, really smooth out those creases. Okay? So what I have now is something that has a really long side on it. So this is where I can take my scissors, learn exactly when I actually cut. And I cut this really short, so I can actually put glue right down here on this edge, and then overlap it and glue it together, and I'll have my long, skinny prism. It's hard to roll a little cylinder like I did with this big prism. So that's an easy way to make some nice small boxes and prisms. All right, so I've got all these open-ended forms, but a lot of people want to actually have them closed off so that they look more solid. And there are a couple different ways that I can do that. If I've got something like a square prism or a rectangular prism, I can actually use the top part of it to create the lid or the flaps that will fold over. And what I want to do is actually use my ruler and measure to see that this is just under 2 inches. So if I'm around an inch, maybe 1.25 inches, and I put a mark on each corner, I want to make sure I measure this to make sure that each of these marks is exactly 1.25 inches. So I've got those 3 corners. I put the other corner 1.25 inches. And what that does is that gives me a mark that I can erase later if I still see it. And I'm actually going to cut this down. So I'm actually going to kind of make flaps like a cardboard box or a box of cereal. I'm going to cut at each corner, cut down to my marks. And then what I can do is actually fold this over and try to make sure that it lines up with my marks. What I like to do is actually, once I get it folded, pull it back up so I can easily do the next one. Make sure that I have it nice and even. So I go around, do that all 4 flaps. If I wanted to do it on this side, I would want to measure and do the same thing now before I glue it. But what I can do if I'm ready to glue it, I like to hide my seam, so I'm going to tuck that in, tuck that, and then overlap it. And I just put a little bit of glue underneath there, and then I have the top of my box enclosed. But when you have some weird shapes like a cylinder or a triangular prism, how can you do that? How can you cover up a flat piece of paper, I can go ahead and stick it on and then trim around it. So that's where I use my bottle of glue. I'm going to go ahead and shake down some glue. I'm actually going to put little dots of glue right on the edge. And then I'm going to put that down. And so I want to make sure that I put it down on a piece of paper that's actually bigger than what I need. This is great because my cylinders don't come out as perfect circles. My triangles don't come out as perfect triangles. So if I just set that aside to dry, then I can come back later and trim it. Another way to create a close off and or to attach different forms together is actually use tabs. So I just take a piece of paper and I'm going to cut a long, skinny strip. And what I'm going to do is cut that into some smaller pieces that I can then fold. And then I just take this and I'm going to fold it. And then I'm going to actually glue it on the inside of my cylinder. So here I have one that's already started where I have all these other tabs. So I can just take my brush, a little bit of glue, and then I can go ahead and stick that in. What I like to do is actually fold the tab, fold the tab and make sure that it's right at the top edge. Pick it up, and now I've got tabs on there. And then I can take a scrap piece of paper, again, that's bigger than what I actually need. And then I'm going to take my glue and spread on each one of these tabs. So tabs are good for attaching lids or tops to my forms, but it's also good for attaching different forms to one another. I just might want to make sure that they're hidden inside of an object or behind something so you don't see it. Okay. So I've gone ahead and spread a lot of glue on each one of these. And then I'm going to just go ahead and stick this down. And now, what I can do is actually use my pencil and actually press on each of those tabs in here and go all the way around. One thing about using the tabs is that it's actually a lot quicker at this stage than like I did with my triangle. This still isn't dry and I'm not ready to trim. However, with my tabs, since it's on there pretty secure now, I can actually go ahead and trim. And when I trim this, I'm actually going to go ahead and cut right up next to my cylinder and trim that all the way around. Trying to be careful not to actually cut my cylinder or to cut the tabs. Now I've got that closed in. That didn't line up perfectly, but maybe that gets hidden in the back. So anyway, that's how I can close off my ends.
All right, and then what I want to do is, hold on. I want to show you this guy's artwork, which is made out of paper.
They can't believe it. If you touch it, and then all of a sudden it becomes something else. It expands and moves and gives you that idea of flexibility of movement. And that's what I was trying to achieve. And not just the top, but also with the bottom. Somehow I've been able to change the way that we perceive sculpture. It entertains, it excites. Hi, my name is Felix Santos, and I'm an artist. My first paper sculpture, I glued solid, and I said, I'm going to do this paper. It took me about a year to kind of come up with a whole system. And once that happened, I first sculpted this. I took it to New York, and I went to Washington for a party, and messed around with people. I just wanted to get people feedback for that. It started going viral. Most of my
myself is recycling, and I try to do that. So what I do is I take sheets of paper, individual sheets of paper, glue them in stacks, and then I cut them to about the size that I think the sculpture is going to be, and then I start carving. So all this process is eliminating paper. It's kind of like the original technique of sculpting, but in a different method. I'm using paper versus stone or anything. But the fun part about it is that I can't even give it the original look. So you really, a lot of times you can't really tell if it's paper or what we're talking about. I was invited to a dinner, like a wine dinner, and I brought this bottle. And everybody brought their own bottle and stuff. I walked in like that, I said, wine, nice bottle. They had to pour it up. When I did it like that, they were freaking out. They were crazy. Things that are inspiring me are things that are around me. I made a lace potato chip bag, and then Aesop Rocky bought it. And then, all these celebrities started talking to us. It's just kind of exploded out. So it involves painting, it involves sculpture, and it involves performance art. Because I take these pieces and I go into the public, I open it and show them what it does, so it becomes performance art. This is my new series. This is actually, I finished this not long ago. This is a flexible wood sculpture. So I said, I'm going to make a wood that I can twist and turn, and it goes in any direction. And then, of course, he has a hat that is flexible. I went to a place where it had like old junk stuff, and there's this old TV which is sitting around there. When I saw the TV, it's from the 1950s, I said, I wonder how many people watching, like, what was the most famous show back in the day that kids love? So I was, I would do different research, and it was, Howdy Doody. So I said, I bet I can put Howdy Doody in there in black and white, and I want to just kind of mix all kinds of mediums in it. So I develop a motor and put it inside, and Howdy Doody comes up, remote control, and, he expands. That's what this art does. It engages the viewer, not only to look, but to participate. It just keeps evolving, and that's the beauty about this art. Yeah, I think it expands your mind because you're looking at an object that is solid, and all of a sudden this object does something else. I can do anything, I think, with paint.
Okay, and one more thing. This. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. So just a couple of ideas about how you can create with paper. So these are just strips of construction paper and folded and curled and then glued down to a base paper. And these definitely show movement here. This kind of sweeping around with these stairs right here show movement. This little spiral sitting on top of this archway, that's all kind of showing movement. So don't forget that part of your sculpture. This is folded paper, just one sheet of paper folded, and obviously definitely showing some movement, kind of sweeping down this way. Some more folded pieces of paper. I'm going to show you somebody tomorrow who makes this, and another artist. Some more folded paper. I showed you this the other day, and I started making triangles. This is interlocking shapes of paper. And then also this is one sheet of paper. The challenge is you don't have glue, you only have a pair of scissors and one sheet of paper to make a three-dimensional object. This is another single sheet of paper. And this is another shapes happening, repeating shapes over and over, creating this particular sculpture, kind of growing and flying. It looks to me like these are kind of like wings or open books. These are pretty cool. Also, one sheet of paper sculpture. Obviously, you can see the paper here, and then shapes were cut into the paper and then folded and bent so that the piece is actually three-dimensional. The most interesting parts about these are the fact that they were decorated. You see how the little dots here, the little hearts here. I find that to be more interesting than just the plain construction paper here. So a really simple solution to this particular project that we were doing. Here's some origami if anyone's brave enough to try some origami. I'm not very good at it, so that's why I say brave enough. Here's another just shapes put together, these cubes all kind of amassed together. And this is cut paper. It looks like it's kind of like made into a cone and then pulled together and is hanging. So you don't have to worry about any kind of foundation with this particular one because it's hanging. And then this is a process by folding paper into these kind of triangle shapes and then interlocking them together to create these forms. This is very long, takes a long time to do this, fold all those pieces of paper and then put them together in a form. But it kind of ends up pretty interesting. So that being said, I want to just say to you guys, you should be working now while we're here on your pieces. You know, make sure you're submitting what you're going to do. So that was last, I think, the beginning of this week. What are you thinking of doing? And then Monday will be the submission for the final piece. And just remember also any last minute makeup work is due tomorrow. So I'll be going through grade books over the weekend, making sure I've got everybody who submitted past due work. And then Monday we'll submit this work, and then Tuesday we're off to another marking period. All right, any questions? Anybody have any questions? No? All right, I'm going to stop this recording.